I like having youngsters about and starting to work on them. You know, when you go back to the basics, you have to start from scratch and get all those things right. And each time you do it, each time you take on a young horse, you hope that you get the basics a bit better than you did the last time. You know, that you can remember which are the things that you should have done, you didn't actually do all the time. I like to think the horse enjoys what he's doing at the time. It isn't always possible because he's sometimes being more difficult and more ignorant than is strictly speaking necessary, so he may not enjoy that part of it. But on the same principle that children can't always enjoy what they're doing, I mean, they have to learn at some stage. You cannot really have a successful horse who doesn't enjoy himself. So if you can keep your work and everything you do, both in your dressage and your jumping and your cross-country work, if you can keep it so that the last thing the horse remembers is a plus point, and that he goes on enjoying it, what he's doing on that basis, again, it'll add up to being a more successful combination, and it'll make everybody's lives easier.
Horses are by nature mistrustful creatures. They survive in the wild by outrunning their enemies and bucking off predators that jump on their backs. These defenses are triggered off by acute senses, quick reactions, and a nervous disposition. Ideally, the training of a young horse should begin a few days after he's foaled. It's never too soon to start winning his confidence by quiet, gentle handling. Patient training can do wonders. It begins by teaching the foal to trust, not fear. At the same time, he learns respect and obedience. It helps if what you ask the foal to do coincides with what he wants to do anyway, like following his mother. Horses have long memories but little reasoning power. They learn obedience by associating it with pleasant results. Badly trained, the horse will learn the opposite. It's the hand round the foal's quarters, not the one by his head, that urges him on, pushing from behind rather than pulling from in front. This foal is just 48 hours old, and it's the first time he has set foot on grass. Apart from a racehorse, the young horse's training for the first 2 to 3 years should go no further than getting him used to being handled and led, groomed, having his feet picked up, getting in and out of a trailer, and so on. He needs time to grow and develop. The principle of training is correction and reward.
Whoa.
Immediate correction when he does something wrong, immediate reward or praise when he does it right. A fault uncorrected is a bad habit being formed. The horse must learn to go forward willingly with the trainer by his shoulder. He should not be pulled along.
Whoa. And walk on. Good boy.
This horse is a 4-year-old and has learnt to trust and respect his trainer.
That's a clever boy.
Now it's time to show him some of the realities of the outside world and to start his training as a ridden horse. The only rule about when a horse is ready to go on to the next stage of his training is that there are no rules. Every horse develops at his own pace. But as a rough guide, at 3 or 4 years old, he should be ready to start work on the lunge.
Pop that on.
The lunge rein is attached to a cavesson, which is especially made for the job. It gives far more control than an ordinary head collar. It is fitted round the nose so that it cannot slip. Boots prevent the young horse injuring himself with his legs. Shoes are necessary only if he is working on hard ground, or may be required if he has brittle feet. The main aims of lunging are to teach the young horse obedience and help him develop rhythm, balance and suppleness before he's ridden.
Whoa.
When lunging starts, it can be helpful for an assistant to lead the horse, encouraging obedience to the trainer's commands.
Just make him stand that.
The trainer holds the rein looped so that it can be paid out without tangling. The rein is held with both hands, so the trainer has more control should the horse play up. Okay.
Walk on.
The horse must learn to move forwards from the trainer, who should stay in line with the horse's hip.
Whoa. Okay. Walk on.
At first,
Good.
she may have to move about in order to keep the horse going forward,
Walk on.
but eventually she will be able to pivot at the center of a circle described by the horse.
Whoa.
With lunging, equal attention must be paid to both sides of the
Walk
horse.
on.
5 minutes on each circle is enough for the first lesson.
And whoa. Good boy. Walk on. There's a clever boy.
After a few lessons, an assistant is no longer needed. The horse should now be responding on his own to the trainer's aids: voice, rein, and whip.
Trot. Trot on. Walk.
The trainer needs to be able to handle the rein and the whip neatly and with the minimum of fuss. At all times, the trainer must be in control of the horse. Right, come on. Good boy. Good boy. Come on, stir up. Stir up. Stir up.
It's really easy if you know what you're doing.
Walk on. Up. Trot.
The lunging rein represents the reins and is used in the same way, keeping a steady contact and giving aids with quick jerks of the fingers on the rein.
Walk on.
The whip represents the leg aids and has
Out.
two main uses: to move the horse forwards
Out.
by using it behind him, and to keep him out on the circle by pointing it at his shoulder. The young horse may have to be touched with the whip occasionally, but once he has learned to
Walk on.
respect it, it's generally
Walk on.
enough just to flick it at him. By now, the young horse will encounter some of the hazards of the outside world. A tractor, for instance.
Ooh.
If he shies at something, never be impatient.
He's only a young horse and he's not used to tractors yet.
Let him have a good look at it and lead him past it at what he judges to be a safe distance. In this way, he'll soon learn there's nothing to fear.
Good boy. Now walk on. Good chap. There's a good boy.
No stage during a horse's training should you try and teach him more than he's able to learn. He'll be willing to try and do what you want, provided he knows what it is. But he hasn't much room in his head for many ideas at once, and gets easily muddled. So one lesson at a time is enough.
Have a look at this.
Once he has learned to go well and calmly on the lunge, the bit can be introduced. A jointed snaffle is the best type of bit to use. The headpiece should be adjusted so that the snaffle comes up well into the corners of the mouth.
Let's have a look, see.
The bit must not be too wide.
Good.
The young horse is now lunged in the snaffle, but always with the lunge rein attached only to the cavesson.
Trot. Up, trot. Trot. Trot on. Walk. Walk. Whoa.
Once he's used to the bit, a roller can be fitted. If he has never worn a rug, he may object quite strongly to having anything strapped round his body.
Okay.
So the roller must be fitted very carefully.
I'll just hold that.
Good lad. Oh, the fella.
Stand.
Good boy.
All right.
Good boy. Yep. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy.
A breast girth is important to stop the roller slipping back. It should be done up first in case the horse plays up. To begin with, the roller should be kept quite loose. When he's got used to being lunged in a roller and breast girth, the roller can be tightened and the breast girth now becomes unnecessary. The next stage is to fit side reins, which go from the roller or saddle to the
Boy.
bit. At the beginning, these should be fitted so that they don't interfere with his natural head carriage. As his training proceeds, he'll become more balanced and with less weight on his forehand. The reins may then be shortened, but they must never be used to force his head into position.
Trot on.
The horse should now be ready for a saddle. He is first lunged with the surcingle to stop the saddle flapping. Next, the stirrups are attached, and the leathers are threaded through them to stop them slipping down.
Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy.
It is essential that the tack should fit well and be of good quality and craftsmanship, something for which Britain has a long tradition. It's a trot that the horse first begins to accept the bit as he relaxes his back and lowers his head. Once he's well established in walk, trot, canter, and the transitions between these paces, the young horse is ready to jump.
Walk on. There's a good boy.
To give him complete freedom, this is done without reins and saddle. First he is led through the barrels and then over a single pole on the ground. He's met something of this kind before and just needs to reassure himself. Before the horse is lunged over a jump, a pole should be leant against the inside jump stand to prevent the lunge rein being fouled and to act as a wing.
Boy. Trot.
Once he's used to trotting over a pole on the ground, the end nearer the trainer can be raised. As he gains confidence and jumps calmly and without rushing, another pole can be added. If the first stages of jumping are introduced correctly, it should be fun for the horse, and he has every chance of becoming a keen and enthusiastic performer. He didn't treat that with much respect. That's better. He really picked his feet up that time.
Good.
When the horse is jumping these cross poles calmly and rhythmically, he can be introduced to a spread fence. As with all training, remember he should be worked on both reins.
Boy.
The young horse should thoroughly enjoy this part of his training and will develop the intelligence and agility that are the foundation of a good jumper.
Ready.
We have now reached the exciting part of training when the rider is introduced. A lot of people are worried about backing the young horse. They expect him to react violently to the new sensation of a rider on his back, and there to be a major clash of wills. But if he's been trained calmly and thoroughly up to this point, and if backing, like everything else, is carried out in easy stages, there shouldn't be any difficulty. It should be done in an enclosed space.
Good boy.
If you haven't got access to an indoor school,
Good boy.
a small paddock like this will do very well.
Good boy. Woohoo. Good lad. Good lad.
The horse has been working on the lunge to settle him down. Now we get him used to the idea of the rider's weight on the saddle. And as always, we do it on both sides.
Good boy. Good boy.
The horse now looks ready to have some weight on his back.
Whoa. Good boy. Good. Okay. Right down.
Getting the rider leaning across the saddle and patting the horse's neck on the other side is as much as you should attempt on the first day. Next day, you can try a few steps at walk. As the horse grows in confidence, the rider can carefully put a leg over the saddle, but keeping the top part of his body low.
Walk on. Walk on.
Every new development is done first at halt, and when the horse is used to it, he can be walked on. The next step is for the rider to gradually straighten his body until he's sitting upright. The reins should be untwisted if the horse is likely to play up. If this horse were a 3-year-old, he'd now be turned away to rest. Next spring, these preliminary stages would be run through again, and then serious mounted work would begin. But as our young horse is a 4-year-old, we can continue with his training. To start with, the rider merely sits there while the trainer gives the commands.
Okay.
Yep.
Walk on. Walk on. Good boy. Keep out. Good. Keep out.
After 2 or 3 days, if the horse is calm in walk,
We'll try
a trot can be
okay?
attempted.
Up. Trot. Boy. Trot on.
To avoid alarming the horse, the rider starts at sitting trot, but as soon as possible rises to the trot to give the horse the freedom to use his back.
Walk. Walk. Whoa. Good boy. Walk on.
Next, the rider takes up the reins and gives the aids in conjunction with the trainer's words of command.
Trot. Walk. Whoa. Right, will you take over now?
Okay.
Now the rider gives voice
And
aids
walk
as
on.
well.
Walk on. Trot. Trot.
Now the rider uses legs, hands and voice.
Walk. Whoa. And walk on. Walk on. Trot. Trot.
The horse should be worked on a long rein, finding for himself the
And
carriage of his
walk.
head and neck needed to balance himself and the extra
Whoop.
weight of his rider. Now he is ready to work on his own. When he successfully walks on his own, he may be asked to trot. When turning, the rein aids are exaggerated until the horse understands what is required of him. For jumping with the rider on his back, the horse has to be taken back to the pole on the ground and progress at his own speed until he can jump a series of fences calmly and confidently. This is just the beginning, and it usually takes up to 3 months to reach this stage. But it's been a good beginning, because the trainer has been patient and has never asked more of the horse than he could understand or perform. The pleasure of riding an obedient horse, who is mentally and physically able to do all that is required of him, more than repays the effort of training him correctly. One day, these yearlings will grow up and be trained. They too should be treated with patience, kindness, and firmness.
The first time I was ever, strictly speaking, taught was when I was at school. And I didn't really understand the process of it. I thought that if you could sit on a horse and stay there, that meant you could ride. And I suspected a lot of people suffer from that particular fallacy, quite a long time. I also grew up in a family which basically played polo. So I got into a lot of bad habits from later life, I suppose. Now, I don't honestly think that I missed very much. I perhaps appreciate more now what it is that you need to know than I would have done if I had been taught from the word go. I try now, especially with the young horses that I take out on a hack, to do the work, or some of the work, actually on the hack. So in that respect, I am thinking about my position and my seat all the time.
You don't have to be an expert to tell the difference between a good riding position and a bad one. The bad one looks awful for a start. But it's wrong not only because it's inelegant, not even because it doesn't meet the British Horse Society's definition of the correct classical position. It's wrong because it's a downright inefficient way of sitting on a horse. The classical position looks right, but again it's not elegance that makes it correct. Nor is it correct simply because the British Horse Society says so. It's correct because it's the most practical and efficient way of sitting on a horse. So let's look at it in detail and find out why. If your horse is to give of his best, he must be hampered as little as possible by your weight. So it makes sense to place your weight where he can most easily carry it. Here, just behind the withers, over the center of balance. It makes sense, too, that your own center of gravity should be directly over the horse's. You do this by sitting upright so that all your weight goes down into the saddle. Then you can work in harmony with your horse. It's important to work at the correct position until it becomes instinctive. Now we're going to watch someone who's doing just that. And to start right at the beginning, we'll see her mount. Remember the first thing. Always check your girth. To the right. Can you hold him while I get on? See what I mean? The other thing to check before mounting is the length of the leathers. As a rough guide, the leather and stirrup combined should be about the same length as the arm and fist. To mount from the near side, take the reins in the left hand just in front of the withers. Take the stirrup in the right hand, give it half a turn towards you or the leather will be twisted when you're up. Put your left foot in the stirrup, turn to face the horse and hold the saddle on the pommel or waist, not the back, with your right hand. Spring up, straighten both knees, swing your right leg over and sink gently into the lowest part of the saddle. Put your right foot in the stirrup and take the reins in both hands. Now for dismounting. First, take both feet out of the stirrups. Take the reins and whip in the left hand on the horse's neck. Hold the pommel of the saddle with your right hand. Leaning forward, bring the right leg back and swing it cleanly over the horse's back, dropping lightly to the ground. Take hold of the left rein with the right hand. It's usual to mount and dismount on the near side, but as this is not always convenient, it's a good idea to practice on the off side as well.
I'm over here.
Oh well, our rather more promising pupil has mounted again. So let's see how her position at halt conforms with those basic principles I was talking about just now. When you are sitting in the saddle, you should sit up, never slouch but sit up straight. You should sit in the lowest part of the saddle with your weight squarely on both seat bones and only enough weight taken on the feet to keep the stirrups in place. It should be possible to draw a straight vertical line from the ear through the shoulder, the hip and the heel, and another one through the middle of the head, down the spine, the center of the saddle and the horse's spine. In other words, you should be sitting straight and upright, but without any tension or strain. Your thighs should be flat on the saddle without any tension. The knees point to the front, and this helps you to sit deeper in the saddle. You shouldn't force the knee into the saddle, but relax it, so that the lower leg hangs down to lie softly against the horse's side. It has been said that the legs should lie like a wet cloth around the sides of the horse. The widest part of the foot rests on the stirrup, and the heel should be slightly lower than the toe. The legs and the body move the horse forward. The hands, through the reins, control and guide him. Let's see what that means to the position of the hands and arms. The reins must be short enough to maintain contact, but if you hold them as short as this, you can't allow for those head and neck movements without losing your balance. So the correct position is for the upper arm to be hanging down with the elbow bent and just in front of the hip. Supple arms and shoulders will then allow you to follow the head movements. The guiding and controlling signals that you give through the reins must be light and sensitive. Tugging back with your arms and whole body will upset your horse and damage his mouth. The rein enters the hand either under or over the little finger and comes out over the top of the hand where the thumb rests on it lightly. The fingers should be closed but not clenched. The back of the hand is at right angles to the ground and forms part of the straight line through the forearm to the horse's mouth. When the rider is concentrating on the horse, the riding position can too easily deteriorate. The best way of working on this is to ride without stirrups on the lunge. Because the instructor is controlling the horse, the rider can concentrate on perfecting the position. Now, Lorraine, just hold on to the front of the saddle with both hands and pull yourself down into the deepest part, or the center of the saddle. A little more forward, just a little more. That's good. Now think about relaxing your thigh and your knee and let them go slightly longer. And keep your lower leg lightly in contact with your horse's side. That's super. And the last thing now, think about keeping your shoulders a little more above your hips so that you've got a straight line from your shoulder to your hip to your heel. Yes, that's a lot better. Now we'll go and try and see if we can hold your position in walk. Good. Now, Lorraine, you've gone back to your original problem of gripping a little with your knees and thighs. So try to let your lower leg grow longer. Yes, that's super. Now we'll start to do an exercise which will help you with this problem. So think about bringing your knees and thighs away and then putting them back against the saddle again quietly. So knees and thighs away now and back, and then relax. And once more, knees and thighs away and back and relax. That's super, that's much better now. And once more, knees and thighs away and back and relax. Good. Now we'll go forward to the trot. Rut. Come on, good boy. Now you're tipping forward on your fork, therefore you're in front of the movement. So correct this by sitting upright. No, not like that. You're still on your fork and your bottom sticking out. Come on, sit up straight. Yes, that's a lot better now. That's the position we want. Well done. Just relax your knees more. And as you relax your knees, let your lower leg come in contact with your horse's side. Good. Now take your hands off the front of the saddle and imagine that you're holding the reins. Slightly lower. A walking horse nods his head as each foreleg comes to the ground. While keeping rein contact, the rider's shoulders and elbows must let the hands follow the movement and not restrict it. There are two positions for the rider at trot: sitting and rising. In rising trot, you allow your seat to be lifted from the saddle on one beat and to sink into it again on the next. The hands remain still, and so does the lower leg, while the body moves forward and down, rather than up in the air and back like this. This is the sitting trot. Notice that she doesn't rise, but keeps her seat in contact with the saddle throughout. She absorbs most of the horse's movement through her back, but also through her hips, knees, and ankles. The shoulders and elbows are relaxed, allowing the hands to follow the movement of the horse's head while keeping rein contact. Not only will bad balance upset the horse's rhythm, an unbalanced rider will try to compensate by gripping, and this will only cause him to bump. In trot, the horse moves up and down, but his back stays level. In canter, there's a certain amount of spring, but the most pronounced movement is the change in the level of his body from front to back, rather like a rocking horse. Now, if you're to keep your body upright while the horse is doing that, you'll have to be supple in the hips. The horse canters in 3 time, and the rider should feel and react to all 3 beats. You keep your body upright by movement of the hips. The inside hip, that is the hip on the same side as the horse's leading foreleg, should be slightly forward, but the leg mustn't be drawn up. Both legs should be long and close to the horse, with the outside legs slightly further back. The hands should still be in the straight line from the elbow to the horse's mouth, and they should move with the movement of the horse's head, which is quite pronounced in the canter. For galloping and jumping, the riding position changes. This is achieved by shortening the stirrup levers. This has the effect of making all the angles, hips, knees, and ankles, more acute. By raising the rider's knee in the saddle, it gives a longer base and makes it easier to balance in a fore and aft direction, and transfers the weight from the seat to the inside of the thighs and the stirrups. The toes can be slightly turned out to help you keep your position. Although the body is leaning forward, the back is still straight, and your head should look to the front. The hands are well forward in a straight line through the elbow, forearm, little finger, and rein to the horse's mouth. The jumping position is based on the principles of balance and putting your weight where the horse can most easily carry it. Remember that whichever form of riding you do, whether it be weekend riding, jumping, dressage, or racing, to achieve a good riding position, it is necessary to use the appropriate saddle. Just as the jumping position is different from the dressage position, so the jumping saddle is different from the dressage saddle. The leathers are shorter on the jumping saddle. The stirrup bars are well in front of the lowest point, and it has knee rows cut well forward, unlike the dressage saddle, which is cut straighter for a longer leg position. The stirrup bar is closer to the center of the saddle, and the rider can sit upright in the deepest part of the saddle. The racing saddle is lighter and flatter than the others, and of course the jockey rides much shorter. As we have seen, one of the main essentials of riding is the correct position. Riding, like everything else, is most enjoyable when it's done well.
I mean, when I first started plodding round to school, having only ridden in a sort of outside atmosphere, I didn't see the point at all. And it's taken quite a long time before you realise that there is some point in it. You suddenly discover that aids actually make getting on the horse and going for a ride much easier than if you didn't know anything about them at all. When you're going out and you're opening and shutting the gates, of which we have a vast variety of more or less unopenable and unshuttable gates, you require the beast to be at least cooperative. And now I think one begins to understand, at last, it's got something to do with the fact that it makes opening and shutting gates an awful lot easier. The aids become part of the actual business of riding. You suddenly discover that aids actually make getting on the horse and going for a ride much easier than if you didn't know anything about them at all.
Riding a horse is a little like driving a car. Neither will go the way you want unless you use the right controls, the right aids, to make it go faster or slower, turn to the right or the left, to start or stop. The difference between a horse and a car is that with a car, what you do with the controls directly affects the moving parts. You press the accelerator pedal and the throttle opens. You turn the wheel and the steering gear moves. Of course, a horse isn't like that. Some people think they can treat him like a machine. Kick him to make him go, yank the reins to make him stop, steer as though the bit were a handlebar. Then they discover that the horse has a mind of his own. And it's with the horse's mind that our aids have to communicate. Only when he understands them with his mind will he respond to them with his body and limbs.
Trot. Trot.
So the horse has to be trained little by little to understand what we tell him.
Whoa. 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 Walk on. Walk on. Trot.
The tone of the voice is what he understands first,
Trot on.
either sharp or soothing. And after a while, he will learn to recognize a few simple words of command.
Whoa. Whoa. Hands.
When the horse has learned to respond to the voice, lunge, rein and whip, we can use this understanding to teach him the other aids. For instance, if we ask verbally for a trot,
Trot on.
and at the same time we use the appropriate leg and seat aids, The horse will learn that when he feels certain pressures, he is expected to trot.
Trot on.
And as his training progresses, the rider's voice is used less and less, till the aids are given by the legs and hands alone. Aids, remember, are a way of communicating with the horse. They are not a way of forcing him to do what you want. Correctly used, the aids should be virtually imperceptible to a third party. A sort of secret language, if you like, between you and your horse. Perhaps before we go any further, we should define the aids we're going to talk about. First of all, there are what are called the natural aids. These include the voice, which we've already discussed, the legs, the hands, and the seat. Then there are the artificial aids. In this film, we're concerned only with those belonging to classical equitation, the whip and the spurs. After the voice, the most basic aid is the use of both legs together by the girth. This is a signal for the horse to move forward, and it is done like this. Remember, the more experienced the horse and rider, the less there is to see. So these aids are exaggerated for demonstration purposes. A well-trained horse should move forward at the lightest pressure from the rider's legs. It's not a continuous pressure. It's a quick nudge, repeated once or twice if necessary. And that brings us to an important principle that applies to every aid, whether natural or artificial. That is, as soon as the horse responds, the aid must be discontinued. I'll try and explain why. Let's look at people for a change and see how we communicate.
You can't go on like that.
Excuse me, please.
Thank you.
But you react quite differently to something like this.
Hey, who do you think you're shoving? I'm sorry. No manners at all.
That's coercion, not communication, and you react against it. So does a horse. So apply the aid and then relax it. The aid tells the horse what to do. The relaxing tells him that he's doing it correctly. Ideally, the horse should respond to the lightest aid and show a definite response to every aid given. Sometimes this doesn't happen, either because the leg aid wasn't clear or the horse's mind was elsewhere. A clearer leg aid can be used, and if necessary, the whip as well. Just a touch should be enough, and always behind the leg. Whether the whip is used or not, the basic aid to start the horse into forward movement is both legs used together on the horse's sides. Now let's look at the leg aids for turning and circling. First, the circle to the right. The rider's inside leg, the right leg, is used to bring the horse's inside hind leg further underneath him, and the rider's outside leg is kept back. If the rider's outside leg is not kept back, the hind quarters will swing out like this. Then the hind feet don't follow the tracks of the front feet. For a turn to the left, the leg aids are simply reversed. The inside leg used by the girth not only creates impulsion, it causes the horse to bend his body to the line of the circle, while the rider's outside leg controls and maintains that bend. So the rider keeps the outside leg a bit further back to control the quarters. The result is that the horse stays in position and circles with the hind feet following in the tracks of the front feet and without the hind quarters straying outwards. A horse tends to bend even when you're riding him straight ahead, especially when moving off into a faster pace. And as this begins to happen, an experienced rider will automatically ask for the opposite bend in order to straighten him. The aids aren't only to start the horse doing something, they're used to maintain him in the way you want him to go. It's a bit like a car. You don't just turn the starter and leave it at that. You have to use the controls just to maintain a consistent course and speed. A learner driver is conscious of every move he makes, and he usually overcompensates wildly. But once he has mastered the principles, it comes automatically. The aids for the upward transition from walk to trot are the same as for moving off. Quick nudges of both legs. When the aids are used correctly, the horse will keep a good outline through the transition, remaining quiet in his mouth and supple in his back. The aids for the canter are different. To canter left, my right leg, the outside leg, moves further back and gives a single definite touch. This tells the horse which leg to canter on, while my inside leg remaining by the girth creates impulsion. Watch me as I break into canter. Now. Remember, an aid should be only as strong as is necessary to achieve the required response. And once the horse has responded, the aid must be discontinued. To canter on the opposite rein, the aids are reversed. And now for seat aids. These are the influence of the rider's weight through her seat bones on the horse's back. They are controlled by the rider's back muscles and are almost impossible to see. They are of particular use if more impulsion is required and in transitions. With a young horse, seat aids must be used with care, as they can cause him to hollow his back. But with the trained horse, the direct use of the seat will increase the swing of his back and so create more impulsion. Before I talk about hand aids, I ought to explain what I mean. Impulsion is controlled energy. When energy is uncontrolled, it goes to waste. But when controlled, it becomes power. The hands, through the reins and the bit, contain and control that horsepower. They don't prevent or discourage impulsion, they concentrate it and give it purpose. The bit achieves nothing on its own. Without impulsion, it's just a lump of inert metal. The horse must want to move forward before you can do anything with him, even if it's halting or reining back. So the legs and seat create impulsion, and the hands receive it. If the hands are to use it properly, they must keep a steady and consistent contact with the horse's mouth. They must also be light and sympathetic. Only then can he accept the bit calmly and confidently, neither straining against it nor dropping behind it. This means that the hands must go with the horse's head movement and not with the rider's body. The arms and shoulders must be supple enough to allow this, and the reins short enough to keep contact. The inside hand regulates the bend and indicates direction by light, intermittent movements of the fingers. The outside hand, keeping constant contact with the horse's mouth, contains and controls the impulsion. The individual use of the hand aids, together with the leg aids that we've already seen, is essential when riding turns and circles. While the inside leg is giving an aid by the girth, and the outside leg a little further back is controlling the quarters, the fingers of the inside hand are asking for the bend and direction, while the outside hand controls the impulsion. So far from using the reins as though they were rigid handlebars and brake levers combined, the rider must deal with them sensitively and individually. Now we come to the only two artificial aids we're going to deal with in this film, the whip and the spurs. The whip, as we've seen, can be used to reinforce the leg aid when the horse isn't paying attention. The whip can also be used to reinforce the leg by asking for extra effort. Racing is one example of this. The whip can also be used as a punishment. When it is, it must be short, sharp, and immediate. It's no good hitting a horse 10 minutes after he's misbehaved. By that time, he will have forgotten what it's all about. Let him feel the whip straight away, and then he'll connect cause and effect and know why he's being punished. Finally, we come to the spurs. They're never used instead of the leg, only as a refinement of it. They're not for young horses, and should be used with great care, as I'll try and demonstrate when I jump these fences. So you have the spurs and the whip, the voice, the legs, the seat and the hands, all at the command of the rider. Those are the aids. As you've seen, there aren't many, but in different combinations and with different degrees of emphasis and refinement, they can produce a variety of results. For example, downward transitions of pace. The seat and the legs maintain the impulsion, while the hands ask for the transition. The use of the seat and the legs through the transition ensure that the first steps of the new pace are engaged and active. Next, the halt. This is really a downward transition taken to its logical conclusion. The impulsion, though closely controlled, is maintained by contact with the legs. The difference between being correctly at halt and just standing still is that the horse at halt wants to go forward and is ready to do so as soon as the aids are applied. From a good halt, we can try a rein back. This is done by asking the horse to go forward with the legs and seat, while a restraining hand prevents him from doing so and encourages him to move back. The horse must be ridden straight forward again without halting. Now the aids for transitions within a pace. For example, from working to medium trot. The legs ask for more impulsion, and as soon as the hands allow him to, the horse lengthens his stride. The horse needs time and pre-warning to adjust his balance when slowing down. The hand lightly restraining the forward movement, while the legs maintain the impulsion. The aids, as well as being necessary for the general training of the horse, have everyday uses. For instance, if we didn't use the correct aids, we'd have some difficulty at this gate. All right, I'll shut it. Skill in using the aids develops with constant practice, but it must be based on a sympathetic understanding of the horse and why he reacts as he does. Skillfully and tactfully used, the various aids not only make the trained horse execute the most advanced dressage movements, they are used in every form of riding. I began by saying that riding a horse is a little like driving a car. So it is, but only a little. It is possible to drive without knowing or caring what goes on under the bonnet. But if a rider doesn't understand what makes the horse tick, He will be a liability to himself and his horse, and he'd better learn.
Frequently, I think you take the young horse into a school situation or into your field, wherever you're going to work, and you do your circles and you do everything right, you hold the reins correctly, you sit, and you concentrate, and then you perhaps go for a walk or just a hack around the countryside, and you let the reins drop and you slop about through the woods around the paths. And when you trot, you let the reins go. And in fact, what you're doing is all the work that you've just spent 20 minutes or half an hour doing in the field has gone straight out through its nose and out through its tail. If only you remembered to do the work while you were actually riding, the horse would think that that was the normal way of going. When you know what it is to ride a good horse that's been well educated, and how much easier it makes both competition and just riding. And then you get a youngster and you say, well, now here I am, I can start. I know the aids, I know the principles, now I must try and communicate this to a young horse and see if I can't make it as easy for him as I now feel it is for me.
Like all young animals, foals have to learn from scratch how to use their limbs and bodies. They learn by trial and error. It's a natural process, and they don't need any help from man. Grown horses know how to make the best possible use of the limbs and muscles that nature has given them. They are superb instinctive machines, and walking, trotting, cantering and galloping all come naturally to them. So why do we have to train them? Why not just let nature take its natural course? The reason is, of course, that we've interfered with nature in the first place by getting on the horse's back. All that he's learnt about balancing himself has to be relearned, so that he can do it as well as before, but while carrying a rider. A properly trained horse moves easily and effortlessly, doing everything that's asked of him at all paces. Let's go over to the paddock and see the basic paces demonstrated in detail. The sequence of the horse's legs varies with each pace, as the coloured bandages on this horse will help to show. First, the walk. This should be calm, active and purposeful. There's quite a lot of head movement, which the rider shouldn't try to prevent. It's what we call a four-time pace. The sequence of footfalls is left hind, left four, right hind, right four. And the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, trot on now. The trot is a two-time pace. The horse springs from one diagonal pair of feet to the other, and there's a moment in between when all 4 feet are off the ground. A moment of suspension. Watch. That brings us to canter, which is in 3 time with 3 beats to every stride. Listen. One, two, three, and a moment of suspension when all 4 feet are off the ground together. When he's cantering to the right, he leads with his right foreleg, and the sequence is left hind and left fore together, right fore. When the horse is cantering to the left, he leads with his left foreleg, and the sequence is right hind and right fore together, left fore. We've seen walk, trot and canter. Nothing is better for demonstrating gallop than the thoroughbred racehorse, which for generations has been bred to do just that. Gallop is a 4-time pace. With the left leg leading, the sequence is right hind, right fore, left fore. You cannot really describe the halt as a pace. However, there is a position that the horse should take up at halt. He should be straight, attentive, and relaxed, and his weight should be evenly distributed over all 4 feet, and his front feet and hind feet should be together. Finally, we come to the rein back. This is 2-time, or almost so. The horse should move back in a straight line and forward again without halting. The feet move in diagonal pairs and should be picked up deliberately without dragging and put down cleanly. Those are the basic paces. How do we get the horse to perform them correctly? There is only one way: patient, progressive training that enables the horse to develop the necessary muscles and balance. This is a young horse. He's not very used to having the weight of the rider on his back yet. Right, walk him on. After a few minutes, the horse can be worked in trot. The untrained horse's centre of gravity is too far forward. That's called being on his forehand. To enable him to be ridden correctly, he must be trained to readjust his balance by engaging his hind legs and bringing them further underneath him. That's where the power is, the impulsion. Impulsion is the energy that drives a horse, makes him want to go forward, even when his speed across the ground is quite slow. It's contained energy, instantly ready for the rider to call on. Maximum impulsion can be achieved only when the horse works with a supple back and a good outline. Compare the long, low outline of this young horse with the more rounded outline of a horse at a more advanced stage of training. His legs come further underneath him, and he has less weight on his forehand. He should always accept the bit, and the face should be in front of the vertical. The back and loins are relaxed and swinging when the horse is moving. So is the tail. Throughout his training, care must be taken to establish a good outline. Only then will his muscles develop correctly and he will become well balanced, relaxed and supple. With the fully trained horse, the outline has developed further. The front legs look light and easy, and not as though they were pulling the horse along. The hind legs, without snatch or stiffness, are actively propelling the horse forwards. All the joints bend: elbow, knee and fetlock, stifle, hock and fetlock. His face is in front of the vertical, the jaw is relaxed and quiet, and he is accepting the bit. The muscle beneath the neck is soft and relaxed. His back is supple with plenty of swing. With training, the horse will develop good rhythm and tempo. Rhythm is the regular repeated sequence of hoofbeats in each pace. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 for the trot. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 for the canter. Tempo is the speed of the rhythm. It ought not to vary within a given pace, even when the horse lengthens or shortens his stride. Watch and listen to this horse cantering. He lengthens his stride and he is going a lot faster in terms of miles per hour, but the tempo of that 1, 2, 3 rhythm stays the same. Again, no change of tempo in that downward transition. Straightness is another quality a horse develops in training. The hind foot should follow exactly in the track of the corresponding front foot, and the horse should be in a straight line from nose to tail. When moving in a curve, the neck should not be bent more than the body. Otherwise, as we see here, control of the shoulders will be lost and the hindquarters will be thrown to the outside, a very common fault. The horse's body should bend equally from nose to tail along the line of the curve. There should be just enough bend in the neck to allow the hind legs to follow exactly the tracks of the front legs. Finally, a well-trained horse that is in harmony with his rider will be calm, relaxed, and responsive. These riders are working their horses in the basic paces and their variations. The walk has 4 variations: collected, medium, extended, and free walk. It is at medium walk that the rider first works a horse. The hind feet must touch the ground slightly in front of the footprints of the front feet. The horse must move energetically but calmly with even and determined steps. The natural up and down movement of the horse's head must not be restricted. In free walk, without losing contact, the rider allows the horse to stretch his head and neck forward and relax, while maintaining the activity with a long, easy stride. In extended walk, the horse covers as much ground as possible without change of tempo, the hind feet touching the ground clearly in front of the footprints of the front feet. The collected walk is shorter than medium walk, although showing plenty of activity. Each step covers less ground and is higher because all the joints bend more. The neck is raised and arched and the face nearly vertical. The hind legs should be well engaged with good hock action, the hind feet touching the ground behind or in the footprints of the front feet. Now for the trot, which has 4 variations: collected, working, medium, and extended. First, the working. This is the basic trot in which a horse, not yet ready for collection, shows himself properly balanced and goes forward with even, elastic steps. As this horse shows, the hind legs should be active, the back supple. He should accept the bit, and his head should be steady. The pace between working and extended trot is medium trot. The horse goes forward with free and moderately extended steps. He lengthens his stride while maintaining plenty of impulsion from the hind quarters. In collected trot, the horse's steps are shorter, the neck raised and arched. He must be full of impulsion with the hocks well engaged. His centre of gravity should be well back, making him light on his forehand and very manoeuvrable. This lightness and impulsion should make the horse more mobile and enable his shoulders to move more freely. In extended trot, with great impulsion from the hind quarters, the horse lengthens his stride to the utmost. This young horse still lacks the engagement of the hind legs and the balance necessary to produce that full extension. However, with this horse, the whole outline lengthens to show real extension. As the impulsion comes through from the hind quarters, the rider allows the horse to lower and extend the neck. Exactly the same principles apply to the canter as to the trot. You have collected, working, medium, and extended paces. As with trot, working canter is the basic pace to establish before the horse is ready to attempt the variations. The horse must be active and the hind legs must come well underneath him to propel him forward. The working canter must have spring and lightness about it, with a distinct 3-time rhythm. The horse lengthens his stride to medium canter. Working canter again. The horse must be supple in his back, active behind, steady in his head, light in the hand, his hind legs following in the tracks of the front legs. The transition to medium canter must be smooth and fluent with no change of tempo. The extended canter. The horse must cover as much ground as possible without losing any of his calmness and lightness. The rider allows the horse to stretch his head and neck forward with no quickening of the stride. In the transition from working to collected canter, the horse remains in perfect balance. His strides are now shorter than at the other canters. Due to the increased engagement of his hind legs, his forehand is lighter and more mobile. In such balance, his neck is raised and arched. Those are the basic paces and their variations. Let's have a look at some common faults. When a horse is cantering on a straight line, the hind legs should follow the tracks of the front legs exactly. Here, the quarters swing inwards and the head turns to the outside. This horse is resisting the bit. Although the pole is the highest point, the head's too high. The neck is straight and the muscles are tense. he's above the bit. He should lower his head, relax his neck and back, and his face should come nearer to the vertical. With this horse, the neck is much too short. The face is behind the vertical, he's overbent. He's also leaning heavily on the bit and going with unlevel strides. As a result, he breaks into canter. The pole is no longer the highest point. The neck gets even shorter with the chin almost touching the neck. The transition from trot to canter should be balanced, smooth and effortless. Not as we see here, a very rough transition. This horse is lapsing into a 4-time canter. Instead of the inside hind leg and outside foreleg hitting the ground together, as in the correct 3-time canter, here the sequence is at times broken, with 4 distinct beats to the pace. In this extended trot, the horse is unlevel behind, the rhythm is lost, and he is overbent. The pole is no longer the highest point, the face is behind the vertical, and he's leaning on the bit. Again, the extended trot. This horse's stride quickens rather than lengthens. He shortened his neck and raised his head, rather than lowering and lengthening into the pace. Finally, a thing to remember. The horse that moves correctly is supple and active. He accepts the bit with light rein contact and a steady head, and above all, looks in complete harmony with his rider. The paces of the horse are the development of his natural movement. Good training, however advanced, is never a matter of teaching the horse unnatural tricks. Good training simply continues the process which begins as soon as a foal is born, of learning how to use his limbs and body with the greatest ease and efficiency. So a horse that is correct in his basic paces is a pleasure to his rider and to himself.